So you guys are going to find that this unit we're moving into next is kind of a combination of our previous two units. Okay? We're going to talk about chemicals in the environment. Well, we really talked about the environment in Unit 1, right? Our first unit, we talked about ecosystems and species and communities. We used all that vocabulary. And in our second unit, we talked about chemicals. Well, now we're going to talk about how those things interact with each other and how chemicals can impact environments. And for the most part, we're going to talk about bad things. We're going to talk about oil spills. We're going to talk about how toxic substances leach into soils and cause things to die or to mutate or something. So most of the topic that we're going to discuss here is actually like not nice stuff. We're talking about like environmental damage, basically. Okay? So, but we're combining two sections. I think you guys will in general like this section. It's actually much smaller than the first two in terms of how long it takes. And for the most part, it's common sense, is what I want to say. Most people know things like it's bad to dump toxic stuff in a lake, right? Like, that's kind of common sense. We're going to use some vocabulary and give you the right scientific words for things. But for the most part, you guys probably know this stuff. I just need to give you the words for it. Okay? So it's a lot of definitions in this unit. Okay. Here's my first slide here. There's a lot of different environmental science streams, things like chemistry and biology. But if you like this stuff, you can go off and do things like zoology, study of animals, mineralogy, study of rocks, oceanography, studying how oceans work and how soils work. Okay. Oh, why is it not changing slides? Next slide. There we go. Okay, let's do a bit of a review of vocabulary words. Do you guys remember the word ecosystem? What is an ecosystem? Seabass, take it away. What's an ecosystem? Exactly. Let's do some terminology again. If you have a species, that's one thing. If you have a population, that's many of that thing, like, for example, a population of bees. If you have a community, you have bees plus flowers plus, actually, no, yeah, that'll work. Bees plus flowers plus birds plus rabbits, right? Those are all living things. Those are the biotic factors. Put in some non-living things and you have an ecosystem. That was Unit 1. Unit 2, we talked about matter, our stuff, things like elements, compounds, and mixtures. What we're now going to do is put these two concepts together and talk about what happens when chemicals get into our ecosystems. And like I said, in general, it's not necessarily a good thing. That being said, before I get to the bad in this unit, because we will talk about a lot of bad pollution things here, I do want to point out that there are a lot of naturally occurring elements. For example, I found this picture online. H and O are found in this body of water. Why would we find H and O in water? What's water made up of? Exactly, water is H2O, right? Sodium and magnesium are naturally found in soils. That's actually a good thing. Nitrogen and oxygen are naturally found in our atmosphere. So it's actually normal for there to be some chemicals in our environment, right? That's actually a normal good thing. It's when we put new things that aren't supposed to be there that it causes problems. Yeah. We do, yeah. We breathe out carbon dioxide, right? So that's actually a naturally occurring thing, okay? So it is okay to have, like, if you find some calcium or some chromium or some copper in places, that's probably fine, right? But do you guys get what I'm saying? It's when you put things that are not supposed to be there and you do pollution, that causes problems. Okay. Now here's a word I need you guys to know. The word is a nutrient. And I'm fairly confident you've heard that word at some point in your life before. Who needs nutrients? Yeah, we do. But someone else said everyone. If it is a living thing, if it is a biotic thing, it needs nutrients to live, to grow, to reproduce, right? Well, how do we get our nutrients? Food, right? And if you were to eat some food, on the back of the food package, it often lists what is the stuff inside your food. You ever look at that? You know, it's got like, I don't know, vitamin C and riboflavin and other random stuff like that, right? Those are your nutrients, right? And so now nutrients matter to us as humans, but I mean, any animal, any living thing, even plants need nutrients. And really those nutrients are made up of chemicals. Things like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, calcium, sulfur. These are all naturally occurring elements that we as humans or as living things that we require. For example, I know this is a little blurry, but like phosphorus, you need it as part of your DNA. So phosphorus is a natural, healthy part of your body. Right? Nitrogen is another one that you need. It's found in proteins. Okay? So I need to start by telling you that not all chemicals are bad. Is that clear? Some of them are naturally occurring and are expected. Here are the main nutrients we need. I would advise that you guys put a little star next to this and try to memorize this, because this screams test question. Wink, wink. What are the main nutrients needed for human life? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And these are the main things found in our air and our water. I mean, right off the bat, hydrogen and oxygen, that literally is what water is made out of, right? Air has CO2 in it. That's carbon and oxygen. That's kind of normal. Okay. Also, nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and sulfur are often found in soils. And because we eat ultimately plant-based things, right? Now, maybe you don't eat a lot of vegetables, but like maybe you eat meat. Well, guess what the cow ate? There you go, right? So ultimately, those nutrients are getting to you somehow. These are the 9 essential elements. So please know these 9 essential elements. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, calcium, sulfur. Normal, everyday things that are kind of expected to have. These are known as the macronutrients. Okay. That's the word we give them, macronutrients. We need those. There are also other elements that we require, but we don't need them nearly as much. A good example would be selenium. You need some selenium in your body to grow, but you don't need like lots of it. You need lots of hydrogens and lots of oxygens. But like you need these in a smaller amount. So I found this slide right here. This talks about some of the micronutrients, things like aluminum and iron and zinc. Some is okay, but like you don't need lots of zinc in your body to survive. So, does that make sense? Micro versus macronutrients. Micro means like small amounts, right? Like if it's under a microscope, it's a small amount. Macro means like large. So you need large quantities of macronutrients. You don't need a lot of these ones. Okay, next slide here. We're going to talk here then about chemical reactions. Because really, all of these nutrients that we have, all these elements in our body, they're going to undergo chemical reactions. A classic example is something like this. We take this molecule here, which is a sugar, we breathe in oxygen, and it makes us carbon dioxide and water. And we call this respiration, cellular respiration. This is where we breathe and we breathe out. And eventually we need to go to the bathroom because you make water. Right? This is a normal thing that carbons and oxygens are involved. I want to give you a couple of examples of things called the cycles, where we can actually literally see elements cycling throughout life. I've got a picture on the next slide of the nitrogen cycle. Here's a picture. See if I can kind of explain this. There is nitrogen found in the air. A lot of our atmosphere is nitrogen. But there is also nitrogen found in plants. Well, guess who eats that plant? A cow. Well, now what does that cow do? Well, maybe we eat the cow, or maybe the cow eventually poops. Well, now there's nitrogen in its poop, which goes back into the ground. And bacteria use that nitrogen. Seabass, Zach. And eventually, the bacteria in the ground, they decompose and turn into food for plants. What I'm trying to get at is like nitrogen doesn't stay in one spot. It moves around a lot. Very similar. Can you close the door when you're on the way by the way? It's a little loud out there. It's very similar to this picture. Okay. You guys with me? Okay. Have you guys ever seen the picture of the water cycle? Okay, I'm sure you've done this at some point in another science class. Does water stay in one spot? Well, no. It evaporates, it condenses, it rains, it evaporates again, right? What I need you guys to know is that it's normal for chemical reactions to take place. There are many chemical reactions that are normal, healthy, that we want to take place, often involving things like oxygen and hydrogen. Okay? Now, when I'm talking about nitrogen, a word I want you guys to know is something called nitrogen fixation. Okay, here's how this works. Nitrogen is a very important chemical. And the good news is that most of our atmosphere is made of nitrogen. If you guys weren't aware of this, this is a pie graph of what's in our atmosphere. 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. So almost everything that you breathe in is actually nitrogen gas. You just breathe it right back out again. There's also a lot of oxygen in our atmosphere, carbon dioxide, and other random gases. Okay? Nitrogen fixation, then, is what ends up happening when the nitrogen in our air gets used to form other things. So like in this picture, when the nitrogen in the air gets put into a plant so that a cow can eat it, so that it can come back out and go through a cycle, that is nitrogen fixation, where it gets used. Okay, again, normal, healthy process. What was that? You're good? Okay. So that's what this slide here talks about. There are many different chemical reactions which affect our environment. Some of the reactions are healthy, but now it's time to start talking about some of the ones that are not. Okay, so there, I spent 3 minutes talking about all the good chemical reactions that take place. The rest of our unit is now kind of talking about, as humans, how we kind of suck. Because we pollute the world. Sorry. We do though, right? We do not necessarily do a good job of taking care of our world. And like, this is a classic picture, right? Is this smoke and this smog coming from these factories, is that a natural part of the environment? No. So here's the word I need you guys to know. You probably already knew it. The word is pollution. Here's the definition. Pollution is any change in the environment that harms your living things. If you add something to the environment and it harms us, anything living, that's pollution. It can be toxic, it can be poisonous, maybe it's none of those things, but it still causes problems. Okay, that's pollution. Carbon dioxide is actually a naturally occurring element in the atmosphere. But you may have heard of things called like the carbon tax, because right now we're trying to remove people from polluting so much carbon dioxide because it's changing our atmosphere, it's causing global warming. And so anything that changes for the bad is pollution. Okay. So let's talk about some human activities that do pollution. Growing crops, normally a good thing. We like to eat food, but when we grow crops, we often use fertilizers or pesticides that can pollute things. Waste disposal. We have to go to the bathroom. That's just a natural part of life. Where our waste goes sometimes can pollute things. Would you go to the bathroom in the same river that you drink your water from? Not if I didn't have to choose to. We also have waste disposal where we have garbage. And we literally put the garbage in these magic black bins outside of our house and it goes away. No. They take it to a landfill, right? And then the landfill, well, now maybe the landfill has pollution nearby. You guys ever gone to the dump on the north side? It stinks up there, right? We put it way out of town, and I bet you there's some pollution coming out of that. Purifying drinking water, sometimes that causes chemicals. The whole manufacturing industry, when you have like factories that make stuff, they do pollution. Transportation, when we put things on trucks and trains and airplanes, they pollute as well. And so these chemicals, they break down, and sometimes they don't cause long-term damage. However, you guys can read this, other chemicals do not degrade, and they can cause problems. This is effectively what our unit is about. What happens when we pollute our environment? What does it do? Make sense? I feel like, I've already said this before, but I feel like in general, it's very much common sense. You know this stuff, probably. Right? I just need to give you words. So now you know the official definition of pollution. Or now you know of something called nitrogen fixation, how there's nitrogen in the atmosphere that it gets used naturally through chemical processes. Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that then cause problems sometimes. Fertilizer is one. Fertilizers are good. They help us grow plants. We need that. We need food, right? Here's what they normally add. Maybe even highlight this. Fertilizers often add nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Anybody ever seen a bag of fertilizer and there's like 3 numbers on it? I don't know that you've used it a lot before, but there's 3 numbers on the side of fertilizer. Those numbers refer to the ratio of nitrogen to phosphorus to potassium. And normally it's a good thing, right? It helps grow our plants and our trees and our crops. However, what if fertilizer gets into a water system? Less good maybe. I don't want to be drinking fertilizer water because as a human, I don't need any more phosphorus or potassium in my body perhaps. Here's another category of things that agriculture farmers use, pesticides. A pesticide is a generic term for anything that kills pests, okay? Which could be a herbicide, an insecticide, or a fungicide. Herbicides kill bad plants, like weeds. Insecticides kill insects. Fungicides kill funguses, yeah, right? So these are normally a good thing. Hey, fungi, yeah, there's a fungi. I'm not quite done yet, but if you're okay just waiting around, okay. So pesticides are basically anything that we're going to try to use to kill the pests. But again, the problem we have is what happens if pesticides maybe unintentionally kill other species? What if I use a herbicide to try to protect my crops, but in the process, it happens to kill some butterflies? That's not good. Now, I mean, we do need pesticides. This is a crazy stat. It's actually estimated that over half of the world's food supply would be lost if we didn't actually use these pesticides, which means that like we would have half the food on Earth. So like pesticides are good, but we don't want them in our drinking water, and we certainly don't want them killing other things. So here's a picture of some plants. And I don't know that you can see them all that well, but like right along the edges here, can you see how like insects have been eating these plants here? Well, that's why you would want to have an insecticide to try to prevent the insects from eating away at your plants. Here's another thing that we as humans do. We have waste, right? I already talked about the dump, right? At the dump, we collect our garbage, right? Now, if we can, you guys know the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle? You guys ever heard those before? If we can, it's good to recycle things, right? It's good to reuse things. But like a landfill is going to fill up with our garbage, right? Okay. Here's a thing I need you guys to know. What if we incinerate it? What does that mean? Yeah, we burn it. That gets rid of it. Does it really though? When you burn it, where does it end up now? In the air, right? And so maybe it's not taking up space in the dump anymore, but now it's in the atmosphere. That might not be good, right? Here's another thing. Chemicals can sometimes leach into the soil and into the groundwater, right? You start dumping all of your garbage into this big hole in the ground, and eventually it starts seeping into the ground. Okay. Does anybody know what they do at the dump to try to prevent that from happening? There are 2 things they do to try to prevent things from leaching into the ground. One is they try to use some sort of like plastic, and they kind of coat the bottom with the plastic so that it can't get through anymore. Does that make sense? Or another thing they can do is they can use clay, and they coat the bottom of this big hole with clay. And the reason why is that clay is not as like, the word we're going to learn is permeable. Stuff doesn't go through clay quite as easily, but it can totally leach into the dirt. So, but if we're not careful, our soil becomes contaminated. Here's another problem that we have, sewage, right? Now, I've already discussed like, well, we go to the bathroom, right? It's a natural part of life. Poop's got to go somewhere, right? Where does it go? Well, I mean, not only is it maybe from the bathroom, but what if you used chemicals in your kitchen, your bathroom, your laundry room? Maybe you guys may not do your laundry, but if your parents do your laundry for you, right? And they use Tide or Downy or whatever, right? Like, that's a chemical, and it's now dirty water. Where does that water go to? Well, it could go into your septic tank. You could send it to a sewage treatment plant, but like now there's a chemical in the water, right? Fair enough. You guys knew this stuff, right? This isn't new information to you. So here's a word I need you to know then, because you probably didn't know this word, effluent. Okay. Effluent is the word we use for treated water, where after you have water that has washing machine detergent in it and soap and whatever other scum is left over from washing stuff, right? And maybe it's even got like human waste in it. And we finally treat the water and we clean it out. That water is called effluent water. Okay? And where does it go? Well, we try to put it back into rivers and lakes so it can get used again. Make sense? Cool, moving on. Here's a picture I wanted to throw on here because this is good. It's winter time coming up soon, right? What is in the back of this truck? Yeah. And salt can cause problems to our environment. Now, why do we use the salt? Yeah, so that we have traction on our roads so that we don't get into car crashes. That's a good thing. I don't want to get into a car accident. However, what happens in the springtime when all of the snow melts? What's left on the roads? All that leftover salt. And that's kind of a pollutant because it can get into our ecosystems, and now birds are eating it, and snakes are getting covered in it, right? And so I don't know exactly which species are getting involved in it, but we got to be careful with anything that we add to our environment. I read recently that some communities are trying to not use salt. They're trying to use pickle juice, I think, as a way of trying to salt their roads. You hear about this? No, I heard about this somewhere. And the reason why is that apparently it breaks down more naturally as opposed to salt, right? They're just trying to find other things to use instead. Pickle juice. I don't know. I got to find where that article was. It was like a new idea. More natural than salt, I guess. Okay, let's talk about some other things as humans we do. We use combustion. Remember how we talked about this in our chemistry unit? Combustion. It's where we blow things up, we burn them, right? And by burning them, we make pollutants like, this doesn't even seem like it should be a pollutant, but carbon dioxide and water vapor, they contribute to global warming. And we've got to be careful how much combustion we use. However, sometimes we get other things like sulfur dioxide. Okay, quick chemistry lesson. What is the formula for sulfur dioxide? Hey, some of you are getting it. Yeah, sulfur 1, dioxide 2. Yeah, that's a pollutant. Or nitrogen dioxide. Okay. Or nitrogen monoxide. Often when we burn things, we release unintended things into the environment as well. And that's bad. We don't want to have sulfurs and nitrogens in the environment. Okay. We're going to spend a whole class, actually, talking very specifically about air pollutants. Okay. This is kind of an overview day, but we're going to talk about air pollutants another day in class. Okay. Sometimes these things cause acid rain. Guys, can you stop throwing jujubes around? Or at least if you're going to do it, can you catch it? Okay. Stop throwing things around though, guys. Okay. Have you guys ever heard of acid rain? What ends up happening in acid rain is chemicals like these ones here, the ones that I just circled on the last slide, we put them into the atmosphere. And they combine in our clouds, and then when the clouds rain, it causes the rain to become more acidic. Now, I'm not talking like so acidic that if you go stand outside, you're going to melt like the Witch in the Wizard of Oz or something like that. We're not talking that much. But like, it does cause problems to our environment. And we're going to talk about that in a future day. But acid rain is a problem when we pollute our clouds. I actually want to talk for a second about acids and bases and neutral compounds. If you guys don't know the words are acids or bases or something neutral. Water is considered neutral. Okay. And the reason why it's considered neutral is that it's kind of like right in the middle. Okay. And we have like a numerical scale that we use to measure things. Okay, it goes from 0 to 14. And right in the middle at 7 is where we put water. And water is neutral. I can drink water pretty safely. Okay. But there are some things that are considered acidic, and they are corrosive. They're going to make things dissolve, like your stomach, for example. Your stomach has acids inside of it that literally dissolves the food you eat. Right? And you guys probably know about some acidic things like lemons. Lemons taste very sour. Right? Orange juice is sour. It's very acidic. They have pH numbers that are small, like 1 through 6. But what's the opposite of something that's an acid? You guys have heard the word base before, maybe? Okay, maybe this is new then. A base, then, is the opposite of an acid. These are things that are not acidic. They're still dangerous, by the way. The word we use is caustic. And they can still corrode things as well. Guys, focus, please. I know it's Halloween, but like you're not giving me your best attention. Okay. These things right here, bases, have high pH numbers. So acids have low pH numbers. Bases have high pH numbers, and right in the middle is water. Okay. Now, for certain things, if it becomes either acidic or it becomes basic, that can kill it. Plants and animals especially. And so when we have things like acid rain that make things too acidic, they now die. That's why there's pollutants. Okay. That's what this scale here kind of shows. Basically, the idea is over here are your acids. In the middle is good neutral water. Like I can drink milk and water. But I probably should not drink battery acid. Too acidic. And could you handle a little bit of toothpaste? Probably, but you definitely should not drink drain cleaner. It's too basic. And it's probably toxic and poisonous. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. You shouldn't, because it's probably going to hurt you. Yeah, where is bleach on here? Is bleach on the scale even? Yeah, well, maybe bleach was on this one here. Yeah. You wouldn't ever want to drink it, right? It's probably poisonous and toxic, let alone the fact that it's a base. So no, don't drink bleach. Kale, don't drink bleach. He's got it. Okay, good. Okay, we're going to do a lab on this next week. So in picture format, this is not maybe going to make as much sense unless we do a lab. But there are some different ways that we can actually measure pHs. Does anybody have a hot tub at home? A couple of you. Okay. Do your parents ever have to like go out and test the water in the hot tub to make sure it's like safe to go in? Yeah, pools do this. These right here are called indicators. And indicators will change color, letting you know what the pH is, so you know whether it's safe to go in or not. Okay. This thing right here is called litmus, and litmus also changes color depending on whether it's an acid or a base. Okay. Here's a basic rule for you. Red litmus, if you add a base, will turn blue. Bases will make things turn blue in terms of color. Okay. Whereas acids will make these things turn red. We're going to do a lab on this, Tyson, Lara. We're going to do a lab on this next week where we actually try to test and see whether things are acidic or basic, kind of like how you'd have to test hot tub water. Okay. But for right now, I just need you guys to know that there are two different ways you can test a pH. Indicators or something called litmus. And basically just it changes color and lets you know whether it's like too low or too high. Okay, we're almost done here. The last thing I need you guys to know is some more vocabulary. Like I said, today's day is mostly about knowing words. The words I need you to know are things called organic compounds and inorganic compounds. Okay. Now, I actually did not write on this slide the difference between them. I just gave you some examples. I'd like you guys to take a second, look at the compounds in the organic section, look at the compounds in the inorganic section, and see whether you can figure out what organic things have in common that inorganic things do not have. And if you think you know it, please don't yell it out. So look in the first column here, everything in this column here, and see what's the same here that is not the same over here. And try to figure out how we know whether it's organic or not. Okay, what's the same in the organic compounds? You got it. Who said that, Tyson? Attaboy. Yeah. Here's the definition of organic. Organic stuff has carbon in it. Everything in this thing right here has carbon in it. That's what makes it organic. You'll notice that these had hydrogens and oxygens, but so did this one. This had chlorine, but so did this one. What makes anything organic is the presence of a lot of carbon. Now, remember when I talked at the beginning of class about our nutrients? Carbon is an essential nutrient. So essential that we give an entire category for any compound that contains it. So, long story short, if you have a compound with carbon, it is organic. If it doesn't have carbon, it's not organic. Easy enough? Okay, my last slides then. I want to talk to you guys about a few compounds that are naturally occurring. These are healthy, good things to have that often fall into the organic compounds. Okay. You guys will probably recognize some of these things because we talk about them as like the food we eat. Here's the first one, carbohydrates. You guys ever heard of carbohydrates before? You need to carb load before you eat maybe for sports. We find carbs in things like pastas and rice and potatoes, fruits and breads. Okay, those are carbohydrates. That's a type of organic molecule. Okay. Here's another type of organic molecule. They're called lipids. You probably don't know the word lipids, but you probably know the word fat. Okay, like fats, right? Like fatty foods. Okay. The better category for that is lipids, and it also includes things like oil and wax. Okay. Maybe you're cooking and you use like canola oil to cook. That's considered a lipid. Or I think it would fit, like if you're cooking bacon, and you know how you get all that grease afterwards? That's probably a lipid, you know, that fatty type stuff that comes off the bacon. Okay? That is also an organic molecule. You probably can't see these all that well, but can you see how inside here there's a carbon in there, and there's carbon in there? Carbon is what makes it considered organic. Okay, last two, then we're done. Other things you should know about that are organic molecules. Protein. Where do we get our protein from? Typically, meat. Good old steak. Okay, but also fish, eggs, and dairy. Okay, and again, why is this chemical right here? Why is it organic? Because I can see some carbon in it. It's another type of compound you should know about. The last one I want you to know about is the nucleic acids, and we talked about this in biology. These things make up our DNA. Remember, like these chromosome kind of concepts here? Okay, those are also organic. Okay, I'm going to go in a second here because that's why Bill's waiting for me. Let's do a quick summary and let's talk about what to do for your last half hour. Okay. Today, we introduced the environment and chemicals. In general, I don't think I showed you a lot of stuff you haven't seen before. Most of it is like words you might not have known, like effluent or nitrogen fixation, right? But in general, you guys probably know that it's not good to pollute the environment, right? That's not groundbreaking news, okay? Over the next couple of days, we're going to talk about air pollution and water pollution, and we're going to be more specific about exactly what type of pollution happens and what it causes, okay? Yeah, that was basically today. Okay, let's talk about what to do for the next half hour. Okay. Number one, if you didn't finish your test yesterday, you probably could finish today if you want. Okay, so I'll get those out before I go. Number two, if you're not done any of the things on the wall over there, the assignments, the activities, like I started class with, guys, you're supposed to do that stuff to prepare for your tests. If you're doing it afterwards, I mean, I can still give you a mark, but it's backwards. Do it before. Okay. The answer keys are online. I passed back a few assignments, actually, where I said to the person, like, mark it yourself, because that's part of the goal here, guys. Remember that one diagram I put up here to start class? Let me finish with it. Where was it? This one right here. I want you guys to not be unconscious incompetence. I don't want you guys to not be aware of what's wrong. That is why I want you marking your own stuff. Because if you mark your own stuff, hopefully you're now aware of what you don't know. And if you can tell me what you don't know, I can help you get better at it. But if you don't mark your own work and finish your own work, like, of course you're not going to get better. Okay. So those are things to work on. Finally, if you're done everything, like everything, and you're good to go, on my website, the first environmental chemistry assignment is up. You can start on it. For example, question 1, explain what pollution is. We talked about that. Or question number 4, let's say it has the numbers 18, 24, and 6 on some fertilizer. What does that mean? So, does that work, guys? Okay, Bill's going to watch you guys for the last half hour. Are you okay with them scattering around the building like normal? Okay, so you guys can do what you normally do. Put your name on the board if you're going somewhere else. Anyone who's sticking around here, Bill will be here to help. Does that work? All right, thanks, guys.